Hey, it's Jackie. It's the 20th of April. We go home in 6 days. I lost two good friends on the 14th. I'm having a hard time dealing with it.
Sergeant Jacob Blaylock, who everyone called Jackie, saw two of his friends killed on a highway in Iraq. 6 days later, alone in his barracks, he set up a video camera and began to speak about his feelings.
I'd be lying if I didn't say I'm not scared, because I'm going home.
This is Erica Good for the New York Times. Few soldiers emerge from war unchanged, but the vast majority are able to successfully negotiate the transition home. This is the story of one who did not.
I've been through some IEDs, some explosions, some being shot at. A couple buddies of mine got hurt. Maybe killed somebody, for all I know.
For almost a year, Blaylock was a member of the 1451st National Guard Transportation Company, escorting trucks full of gasoline, building materials, and other supplies along Iraq's dangerous highways. He sometimes brought his video camera along on missions.
Yeah, hours of boredom, with moments of intense fear.
I mean, what was it like? It was long hours of the same roads, going up and down. It was not uncommon to be up 26 hours, and need to be.
Soldiers chugged energy drinks and smoked cigarettes to stay alert.
When we was there, a lot of IEDs went off. We were getting hit at least every mission. So it was hard for us, but we hung together.
Out on the highways, the convoys were an exposed target, regularly ambushed by insurgents. If a roadside bomb was discovered in the road, the convoy could be stuck in one place for hours, waiting for bomb disposal teams to arrive.
God damn.
Remarkably, no one in the unit had been killed.
We had people that's over there that would chicken out and not go on missions. And Blaylock never missed a mission. As far as all in all, Jackie was a A1 soldier. I mean, he was good.
He was a good soldier. He would listen. He was willing to be at the front. He had a certain amount of what we call hua, sort of a machismo about it and about, gung-ho to do it right and get out there and do the mission and, I got to be good. He did have that, and he did it well. But there were times when he was just really scared.
This place is awful.
Jacob, while he was there, he just wanted to come home. That's all he wanted, just to make it through.
Heidi Plumley and Blaylock had been childhood friends. They reconnected when he was in Iraq, and they began dating when he came home on leave.
He was a nerd. He was such a nerd. He was a dork. But it was his confidence in it all, and the fact that he was so sweet. He really was sweet.
Just enough so I can climb down.
The first time I saw Jackie Blaylock was actually at Camp Atterbury, Indiana, and we were actually walking up to our barracks, and I seen him, a little skinny guy, with a cigarette in his mouth, and he had a guitar, singing.
How would I describe Jackie? Very, very sweet kid who had gone through some tough times and made him edgy at times. There were certainly times when he had a temper and it would show.
Blaylock was well liked in the company, but he also had demons. A failed marriage and a child he rarely saw. Even before leaving for Iraq, he seemed emotionally fragile to those around him.
Plant my feet on solid ground.
He would have tough nights where he would be on the phone, having very vocal, upsetting arguments with people at home. He wasn't taking the emotional part of this deployment well, and you could see that from a very, very, very early stance before we gotten in the mix at all.
Drinking. When we was at Atterbury a lot, we drank a lot. There's no, getting ready to go. We drank a lot. He thought he could drink his issues away.
And he was great, a huge percent of the time. Great soldier, great kid, we loved him. But we also felt that if he couldn't take this emotionally back here, when we went to Iraq and things got rough, it just wasn't a good place for him to be.
One of Blaylock's closest friends in the company was Sergeant Brandon Wallace. The two shared a love of music and spent hours playing guitar together.
Him and Wallace would sing and cut up and stuff, and he had a really good voice.
Blaylock and Wallace also both sat in the gunner position, the most exposed and dangerous on missions. For much of their year in Iraq, Blaylock was the gunner for the scout truck, which drove out in front of the convoy looking for dangers ahead.
They were in the scout vehicle. Scout vehicle was usually the one that got hit. Not always, but usually, because you're way in front, and if you're going to hit an IED, they're the ones that are going to hit it.
To take a break from the stress of the scout truck, Blaylock switched places with Wallace and moved to the rear truck in the squad. Wallace was now the gunner for Sergeant Joshua Schmidt, who was also a good friend of Blaylock's. Late on the night of April 13, 2007, less than 2 weeks before the company was to return home, they headed out. Wallace and Schmidt were out in front, and Blaylock was in the back of the convoy.
They were coming down the road. They hit an IED that was buried under the concrete of the road, and it blew them both up. It was a big explosion.
The IED went off on the scout truck, and it took it out. There was 4 people in that gun truck, and 2 of them was Parrish, one of them was Wallace and Schmidt. And that's when Blaylock, from the rear gun truck, drove up.
The truck was on fire. Ammunition was exploding from the heat. They had to wait 2 hours before collecting the bodies, so the bomb disposal teams could make sure there were no other IEDs nearby. Blaylock curled into a ball in his Humvee. His friends wrapped him in a blanket and drove him away from the scene.
Jackie asked out of the vehicle. I think he felt guilt.
He felt that, it was his fault.
A few days later, the company held a memorial service for Wallace and Schmidt.
He was very gutsy and went up and played guitar and sang a song for them. He cried through a lot of it. And he kept playing and kept singing. I consider that tough. I consider that strong.
The deaths of Wallace and Schmidt hit the entire company hard. They were the unit's first fatalities on their last mission. As soon as they got back to the U.S., a close-knit group of soldiers, including Blaylock, decided to visit the families of Wallace and Schmidt.
He loved being with all the guys. I don't think he wanted that to end even in some ways. We were all piled into this van, playing music.
During the road trip, he would call me. They were hanging out and having fun and just having a blast, but, they got to meet the parents, and that was hard on him too, because he felt like that it was partly his fault that, Brandon had died because he was in his spot.
I tried to be there for the families. I think Jackie was dealing with his own issues, and that was right. I think it was very helpful for him, or I think it was good for him to talk to those families.
And then once the road trip's over and I say goodbye to the rest of my other brothers, I'm not gonna have anybody right there who would understand what it was like. And that frightens the hell out of me.
He really didn't know what to do. He felt lost. He felt lost when everybody, split up and went their ways and went home and went back to normal life. He didn't have that anymore.
In May, Blaylock flew home to Houston and moved in with Heidi Plumley.
Maybe take a month off, do some thinking, do some drinking, do some smoking, write some songs. Maybe I am starring in a movie.
There was a lot of fond memories. I would come home from work and he would be sitting on the couch, and I could hear him singing and playing his music on his guitar, at the top of his lungs.
Blaylock joined a band and got a job at FedEx Kinko's, but he was haunted by the deaths of his friends. He composed dark poems on his MySpace blog.
I cannot shield my eyes from that blinding fire. I can't get past the heat. That explosion, large enough to send shockwaves through my body, continues to do the same to my soul to this day.
He would have bad dreams. He dreamt that they were still alive and they had come over and hung out with him, and he was trying to tell them that they were dead and they didn't know what he was talking about. When he slept at night, he kicked a lot. If I moved, he would grab me. When he drank, it would get really, really bad. He would constantly tell me, I wouldn't understand. I don't know what it's like.
With encouragement from his girlfriend, Blaylock visited the Houston Veteran Affairs Hospital. While the VA said it could not comment on his case without authorization from his family, records indicate that Blaylock screened positive for post-traumatic stress disorder and depression.
Put your hands down and turn your face. Forget the world around you. Do you reckon?
For anyone who bothered to look, Blaylock's psychological history showed that even before going to war, he had serious problems. When his high school girlfriend became pregnant, Blaylock married her. He joined the Army in 1999 to support his new family and was sent to Alaska. But he and his wife fought constantly, and at one point she accused him of domestic abuse, he later told the VA. He also told a VA interviewer he was hospitalized for depression in Alaska in 2001. The next year, the Army released him from active duty. His discharge paperwork listed personality disorder as the reason for his discharge. The Army placed Blaylock in the Individual Ready Reserves, or IRR, meaning he could still be called back up for service.
He was put into the IRR on a personality disorder. There was no reason for him to be in the war at all.
But in late 2005, a time when the military was in desperate need of soldiers to combat escalating violence in Iraq, the Army called Blaylock back up. When the soldiers went through an Army mental health screening before they deployed, Brian LaGuardia and 2 other soldiers warned the Army that Blaylock was too unstable to go into combat.
I do remember saying, no, but you need to check this guy out. He doesn't need to be going to Iraq. He's not in a good state for that.
And again, when the unit returned from Iraq, LaGuardia told the Army that Blaylock was having problems.
And we all really felt, honestly, that anyone who did take a look at this kid would find that out. That it wasn't so deeply hidden. That talking to Jack, you would realize, what? Yeah, this kid's having issues. Maybe it's not the right move.
It was like he kind of slipped through the cracks. Nobody really paid much attention to him.
Blaylock only met with the counselors at the VA twice. Records indicate he didn't respond to the VA's attempt to schedule a screening for a traumatic brain injury.
If he couldn't make it, he would reschedule. Then they would cancel, and then he would cancel, and it just went back and forth.
In the VA records from his final visit, the interviewer answered the question, "Is the patient presently at imminent risk for suicide?" typing the word no. A VA doctor prescribed Blaylock an antidepressant and a sleep aid, but when he waited in the wrong line at the pharmacy, he was told the drugs would be mailed to him.
It was only until when they said, okay, well, this is what you have and this is what we're going to give you to make you better, did he feel better, that he was going to be okay.
But Blaylock was not okay. 5 days after the VA visit, he got into a fight with Heidi Plumley on the phone. When he arrived at their apartment hours later, he was drunk and angry. He was disoriented, calling her by his estranged wife's name. He said he was moving out and began to pack. He picked up a gun.
He sat down on the floor and he put the gun in his mouth. And I said, what is that going to do? What is your daughter going to think? You can't be that way, And it was quiet for a while. And he was pacing back and forth, waving the gun around. And it just happened so fast. He just put it to his head. And he shot himself.
A few days after his death, Blaylock's antidepressants arrived in the mail. Within a year, 3 other returning veterans from Blaylock's company also committed suicide.
I love you both, dear, Brandon and Josh. You're in my heart always, and I can't wait to see you again. Rest in peace, buddies.